Today, October 20th, 2019, is 35 years later to the day when Hausit and Tla-o-qui-aht peoples, Nuu-chah-nulth, with the support of our allies, brought the Cedar Man here to the lawn of the Legislature building. And at that time, there was a real threat to the ancient cedar rainforests of Meares Island. And, I think everyone can be thankful that those trees are still standing today.
We took the Canadian government to court, and in their own court, Canada cannot prove that they own our land. They have no treaty with us. We've never sold it. We've never lost it in war. And so that island, Wah'nah'juss Hilth'hooiss, Meares Island, was declared a tribal park by our nation. Parks is a word that was chosen in the 1980s just to try and convey what our ancestors have always done, in that when we come and we use anything, it's imperative that we somehow make the place better than before we came for future generations, not just of our children, but the children of all life that we belong to. So the salmon, the frogs, the bugs, the bees, the plants, they are included in that family of life of all generations.
The reality is of today, we need to have an economy so that our people can live sustainably. How do we as Tla-o-qui-aht, how do we decolonize in our own way? How do we shed the colonial shackles of the Indian Act? How do we become who we are in the 21st century? We have some solutions in Tla-o-qui-aht through our tribal parks model. And we want to invite people to become a part of that. We've created a program called Tribal Parks Allies, where we're introducing a 1% ecosystem service fee.
Something that's really important to us as people that live in that area, that allows us, tribal parks, I think to me, allows us to be who we are. And also that it applies the principle of the first law of our people, respect. And also the other principle that it applies is that it recognizes the principle of auspicious, that we are all connected in one way or another. And that's the way we look at things in Tla-o-qui-aht, in applying those principles.
The story goes back to the time of first contact, when our elders and our leadership had a discussion about the newcomers, and most of the people agreed that the newcomers were harmless, that they came with some interesting technologies, but they were in need of everything: fish, timber to fix their boats. They were not a big threat, but there was one of the elders, one of the leaders there at the time, who had a nightmare about the newcomers, and he dreamed that they would eat everything. They would eat the forests, they would eat the oceans, they would eat the air, and they would even eat the mountains. And so, in honor of the descent, this one dissenting voice, they carved a Cedar Man, Joe. And that Cedar Man had one arm out in embracing the newcomers and one arm held back in reservation and apprehension about having relations with the newcomers. And so fast forward to the late 1970s, early 1980s, Joe David, who was a relative, a descendant of this dissenting voice, had a dream as well, in seeing that prophecy of at first contact had come true, and to see all the destruction, and to see that they could actually, with their machinery, destroy entire salmon runs, like as Joe had described. And so in his dream now, he envisioned building a new Cedar Man. And whereas one might think that, well, now we've learned our lesson and both arms are going to be held back in reservation, the opposite was the case, in that, like my brother Terry just said, that we need each other. We need to work together to get out of this mess. And so the new Cedar Man was carved with both arms open and was brought here, this very location where we're standing 35 years ago to the day on October 20th, 1984.
So 35 years ago, the Tla-o-qui-aht took a stand on Meares Island, and they inspired a generation of us to stand with them, not only in your territory in Clayoquot Sound, but all over British Columbia, and I think all over the world. Thousands of people came to Clayoquot Sound, and they came because of what started there 35 years ago. But of course, the stand on Meares Island had even bigger implications than I've already talked about. The resulting court case, which Gisele talked about, essentially granted an injunction in favor of the Nuu-chah-nulth, and that was the first time in history that the province had been overruled on a land claim issue. So Delgamuukw, Chilcotin, and the many of decisions we are seeing today started there.
All of our future generations, all of our young ones coming up here, we are responsible to them. Meares Island, they could not log it. And so it has continued on in all many other parts of Vancouver Island. And right now, happening at a terrible scale on Nuu-chah Island and other parts of this beautiful island that we all call Vancouver Island. So, you know, those are still things that we all need to be concerned about, because, you know, it's what it is doing is ripping off our future generations.
Every day, 34 football fields of forest is still logged on Vancouver Island. Yet temperate rainforests store more carbon per hectare than almost any other ecosystem on Earth. They are so important for the challenges that we face today. This web of life holds us up like a hammock. And as these species disappear, as we do more and more to weaken that hammock, it can't support us.
We will never be reconciled with one another as human beings unless we first reconcile ourselves with the earth. Law school is out there on those islands. It's in those streams. It's flowing through the gills of the salmon. And so part of the revitalization of Indigenous law is to understand and look to those professors, those teachers. The school is in the interactions of all of those beings, and it comes through the language, and it comes through the stories, and it's found in the traditions and the ways of life that can be made current and contemporary, because as those places still stand and those relationships are still there, they continue to teach us about what we need to do.
I will, say that today is about celebrating what was accomplished and looking forward with a positive perspective into the future about what's ahead of us. It's going to be up to everyday Canadians to work together to continue the conversation about reconciliation and to do that work. So thank you all for being here. Let's ignite a fire and continue to move together in a good way for the unborn generations to come. Tla-o-qui-aht Chief.